All right, so here we are ready to start Chapter 1. This is our first lesson. It's called Lesson 1, Rates. Chapter 1 is all about ratios and proportional reasoning, and rates are a big component of that. Okay, so our vocab, we've got 3 words today, and I'm going to tell you right now, I recommend making flashcards and studying your vocab from day 1. This is a very vocab-heavy chapter, so please start studying now. That'll be very beneficial to you by the end of Chapter 1. A ratio. Ratio is our first word. That's a comparison of 2 quantities using division. We can take a ratio and we can add something to it, and if we add something to it, now it becomes something more specific called a rate. A rate is a type of ratio, but it's a ratio that has units in the numerator and the denominator. So let me give you a real fast example. If I write 1 to 5 on the board, on the screen, that is a ratio. A ratio doesn't really have any context. It's just 2 numbers that we're comparing. But if I add 1 cake for every 5 people, okay, now I've added units of measurement into my problem. I've given it some real life context, and now it's no longer called a ratio, it's called a rate. Okay, it still is a special ratio. It still is a ratio, but it's a little more strict. It's got the rules of having units in the numerator and denominator. Now I can take my rate and I can do a little bit of division, and I can solve for 1 unit in the denominator. So if I did some division and I got 2/10 of a cake for 1 person, now I have taken my rate and I have turned it into something even more special called a unit rate. And a unit rate is special because it is a rate, but we've taken the denominator and we've done some division and we've turned it into a 1. Okay, so ratios, rates, and unit rates are all very, very closely related. In fact, they're all types of ratios, but they're just ratios with special restrictions put into place. Down here I have a diagram for you, and I just want to show you this one more time. The entire circle here, everything in this circle is considered a ratio. And in my example, I wrote a ratio. Here's a different ratio, 2 to 3. Okay, 2 to 3, just 2 numbers that are being compared with division. If I make that ratio a little more strict and I add some units and I make it $2 for 3 tickets, I'm just going to put a T to represent tickets. Now I've turned it into a rate, which is a little bit more specific. It's a type of ratio, but it has units in it, the dollars and the tickets. Now I can take my rate, I can do a little bit of division, and I can solve for 1 ticket, and I get 67 cents for 1 ticket. And I did that math, and that became a unit rate because it has a 1 in the denominator. Okay, so everything in this circle is a ratio. Every single example is a type of ratio, but if I go a little bit more specific and I add units, now I'm calling it a rate. And if I go a little more specific and I add solve for the 1 in the denominator, now it's called a unit rate. But they're all related. This diagram is going to be very beneficial, hopefully, to help you understand the relationship between rates, ratios, and unit rates. Sorry. All right. Here are some notes when writing rates. If you have a word problem, you have to set up a rate yourself. I've got a little hack for that. My hack is 9 times out of 10, money goes in the top and time goes in the bottom. So if you're not sure which value to put in the numerator, look for something that's money or money related. And if you're not sure what goes in the denominator, look for something that looks for time or time related. And that will usually help us write our ratios, again, 9 times out of 10. Other note, to change a rate into a unit rate, remember that's really important to get from rate to a unit rate. Those unit rates are very helpful. This is when we are going to do a little bit of division. So we are going to divide. And we are going to divide by whatever number is in the denominator of the ratio, or the denominator of the rate. Denominator. Very slow writer here, sorry. So we're going to do a lot of division in this lesson, okay? So here's our first example. Elijah sent 45 text messages. I'm going to abbreviate that by writing TM. 45 text messages in 6 minutes, and I'm going to abbreviate that by writing MIN. What's his rate in texts per minute? So they're asking us to write the rate and then change it to a unit rate. So remember, very important, money in the top, time in the bottom. And if I look at this problem, I don't have any money. That's not money, that's not money. But I do have time. It says 6 minutes. So those 6 minutes are going to go in my denominator. So the hardest part here, I think, is actually figuring out which number goes on top, which goes on the bottom. That means the other number, 45 text messages, that goes in the numerator. Now my job is to take this rate and turn it into a unit rate. And some of you are probably asking yourselves, hey, do I have to write text messages and minutes? Yes, you do, because that's what makes it a rate. So please make sure you're writing your words, your units in the problem, because that makes it a rate. So now I need to turn this into a unit rate, and a unit rate has a 1 in the denominator. So we want to solve for how many text messages Elijah can send in 1 minute. And the fastest way to do that is to simply take whatever number is in the denominator and divide by that number. So I'm going to divide by 6. And if I want to keep the ratio equivalent, now I have to divide the numerator by 6 as well. 6 divided by 6 is 1. And 45 divided by 6 is 7 5/10. Okay? If you want to check my math, feel free to do so. You can do that longhand or you can check it with the calculator. We did all that in Chapter 0 with dividing decimals. So 7 5 texts per minute. That's what I would say is Elijah's rate in texts per minute. Okay, so final answer is right here, 7 5/10 texts per minute. Let's see another one. Here's one where we can actually use our unit rate to solve another question. So let's read this one. A 20-pound bag of Rachael Ray dog food costs $15.80. 20-pound bag, $15.80. At this rate, how much would you expect a 30-pound bag to cost? Well, first, let's solve for the cost for 1 pound. So remember, money in the top, time in the bottom. Money in the top, time in the bottom. That will be helpful to us. You'll see me write that a lot. You'll hear me say it a lot in class. Our first rate right here is 20 pounds for $15.80. Money goes in the top, and here's my money, $15.80. And I don't have time, but my other unit here is pounds. So 20 pounds. I'm going to use LB to abbreviate pounds. So what we can do now is we can turn this into a unit rate. And to turn it into a unit rate, remember, we divide by the number in the denominator. So we divide by 20. And we do the same thing to the numerator to keep them equivalent, the ratio equivalent. 20 divided by 20 is 1 pound. And 1580 divided by 20, I don't want to give you bad information, but I am going to check this in my calculator, is 3. 1580 divided by 20 is 79 cents. So that is our unit price. Unit price is just a unit rate that relates to shopping. So now let's think. We haven't gotten the answer to the question yet. The question doesn't ask us what's the cost for 1 pound. It asks us what's the cost for 30 pounds. Okay? So is there a way to turn my 1 pound into a 30? Sure there is. We just take our denominator and multiply by 30. And we do the same thing to the numerator as well, because we want to always keep our ratios and our rates equivalent. Now we just need to go ahead and do our multiplication. 79 cents times 30 is $23.70. So to answer the question here, we had to go through 2 steps. First, we solved for 1 pound, and then we multiplied to figure out the cost of 30 pounds. So the answer to our sentence is a 30-pound bag should cost $23.70. All right, take a look at this lesson and take a look at unit rates and practice them. Remember the key information here for a unit rate. Unit rate is our most restrictive of our 3 vocab words here. Unit rate has to be turned into a rate with a 1 in the denominator, and we do that using division. I also want you to remember, very important, to write a rate. We want to put the money in the top and the time in the bottom, and that'll help us be a general guide for word problems and how to turn them into rates. Okay, once we know our unit rate, we can use it to solve other problems like we did here in example number 2. Right? Go ahead and finish up your practice problems and ask any questions in class tomorrow.